Good morning and welcome to Will My PPP Loan Be Forgiven? This is seminar number 2 in our series. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're all here in Western PA, it's a beautiful day. I went upstairs to grab a bottle of water and I heard everybody mowing out there already this morning, and so it's a beautiful day out there. My name is Brian Schill and I'm the Executive Director for the Peters Township Chamber of Commerce, and facilitating with me today is Kelly Keene, our Operations Coordinator. Just a little bit about the Chamber. We're a 501c6 membership-based nonprofit. We do not receive government funding normally. Our funding primarily is composed of each member's annual investment and our events and sponsorships. And with that in mind, I would like to send a thank you to all of you who opted to donate to today's webinar. We really appreciate your support. The Chamber mission is to provide connections, opportunities, partnerships, and resources to grow our businesses and serve our communities. Quite simply, we promote, advocate, connect, and educate. And in addition to Peters Township, our area of coverage also includes the South Hills and Northern Washington County. Joining us again this week is Glenn Main. He is the managing partner at the Main Point Group. He's a former CPA, a longtime chamber member. He lives in McMurray, and his family owns multiple businesses, and he's a consultant to business owners all over the U.S. And with him today is our special guest, Steve McCarron from Community Bank as well. So for those of you that didn't join us the first time, the reason we're doing this is we were getting a lot of PPP questions, and a lot of them were geared to will my loan be forgiven? So we turned to the noted national expert Glenn Main right here in McMurray, and voila, here we are today with Will My PPP Loan Be Forgiven Part 2. So our goals today are to review a little bit from last week to catch the rest of you up that didn't make it with us last week. Glenn will then give us an update, and then we'll do some Q&A. Sound fair? All right, little Zoom 101. Everyone will remain muted, please, during the entire update. That will eliminate the background noise. This is being recorded, so it'll be available later. And if you do have a question, use the chat feature to ask your question. And you can just make sure if you want to just send it to everyone, that'll be fine. So for those of you that joined us last week, sort of curious, did you happen to do your homework? We talked a lot about documentation. So hopefully one of the things you wrote down were your reasons for applying for a PPP loan. So Glenn, I'm going to let you take it away, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being with us again.
Well, thank you very much. I was thinking this morning, you know, we used to say in the good old days, I'm calling in, I'm Zooming in. I didn't know what Zoom was 3 months ago, but we're checking in from our remote office. Now it is the office, right? Because it's illegal to go to the real office. So we'll just sell the sucker. And another thing to ask for everyone is, if you have a question, and this kind of forum tends to generate questions, and business owners are full of questions and sometimes answers anyway, please use the chat. Because if you'll use the chat, Kelly, who's clearly the most capable one of the crew here, will capture it. Like last week, we had so many questions, we just couldn't handle them all. So if we promise to get back to you with an answer, we will give you an answer. Some questions are more specific to certain businesses, and so we have to make a call as we go on some of them, but we'll happily answer any questions, and there's no cost, or, you know, this is the big give back time, I think, for all of us. So that's what we're doing. We're also, as we did last week, you know, I think one of the things that people are struggling with is, I'm sure you get the same volume of material in your inbox with offers from people to sell you stuff and tell you what to do and everything, which is fine if that's what helps you get through all of this. But honestly, as a business owner and as a person who works with business owners, most of it isn't very good, or it's a week or two old, which means it's a century old. And this thing is changing faster than anything I've ever seen in my whole life. And it's been a while since I've been in business. So it changes constantly. So anything you buy or anything you subscribe to, just, you know, if it looks like it looks pretty in a pretty format, it's probably old. Just to give you an indication, Matt from our congressman's office, Reschenthaler, who's a really good guy, I voted for him, and Matt in his office has helped me on several occasions. He's doing a good job. But anyway, Matt just sent over the link to the latest SBA guidance. When this started on April 1st or thereabouts, I'm using April 1st because April Fool's Day seems like an appropriate start date for this thing. There were 0 items of guidance, 0. All we had to go off of was an 880-page bill, because that's how law gets to be law, right? That's what happens with our Congress. And I have it if anybody needs it, ship it right over. And so we didn't know, you know, there were more questions than answers in there, partly because it got done so fast, partly because it's Congress. And so the SBA went to work and started writing their rules, okay? So it's kind of like having the Clue game or the Monopoly game or Candyland that my grandkids love, and kind of making it up as you go, which is what the grandkids tend to do, and it's actually more fun that way. But so the SBA decided, nope, got to have rules. So they're writing these rules as we go. And the rules are sometimes difficult to understand. So they put it into a FAQ, FAQ, you know, style. So if you want to have some light reading, it's not all that bad. And I was teasing my friend, Steve McCarron, who's a top dog at Community Bank here in Pittsburgh area. They serve, what is it, Steve? 27, you have 27 branches, I think, in 3 states, something like that.
Yep, that's correct.
That's awesome. Steve's definitely a partner in crime through all this. I think he's talked to me more than he's talked to his wife the last month and a half. That's the rumor. And anyway, but what we've tried to do, and we're able to, you know, throw out to you guys, if you'd like it, is we're creating tools as we go to try to interpret this in a way that business owners can understand. Not because they're stupid, they're very smart, but it's really hard to take all of this stuff that's mostly written by lawyers and CPAs and people like that. I actually kind of get a tickle out of it. Some of them are my best friends around the country, so we talk about this a lot every day, but they don't know how to write stuff that people can consume, I don't think. So we're going to talk about our forgiveness scenario planner that I got done about 11:30 last night. And I was just hoping the SBA didn't change the rules on me again. We talked about it last week. So we're gonna get that out to everybody. And what I would mention to you is, you know, we're not charging for anything. We're doing that on purpose. Brian and Kelly and I said, let's just do this to help people. But we are asking you to do something, okay? The goal for me, and I know for the chamber, is to help business owners, really and truly, because we're all sort of linked together somehow. So if you will get other people to come back, that would be great, because this isn't going to end in a short while. It's not like a one and done thing, I don't think, particularly this forgiveness situation. So if you'll invite other people to come and come back, we would love to have, I mean, this is the highest attendance the chamber's ever had for this kind of thing, but we'd love to have like 100 on the phone. So that's kind of our short-term goal before we do 1,000. So if you'll do that, and if you'll come back, that would be great. So next week, you know, we'll push out this scenario planning tool for you to use for forgiveness thinking. Next week, we'll just go over it. sort of line by line by line. So you're 1 week away from the magic, whatever. Okay, so let's do this. There are a lot of new people on the call. So what I'd like to do, and I'm going to get Steve to help me out, is we're going to try to speak plain English as much as possible. So it's not hard to understand the complexity of this thing. It is much harder and more complex, I think you'll see as we go. If it was simple, nobody would be paying attention, and a lot of people are paying attention. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is how do you get loan forgiveness? That's really the question, isn't it? I don't know any business owner that woke up 2 months ago and said, I can't wait to get a federal government loan, even at 1%, even payable in 2 years, right? That just absolutely makes no sense. So why did the $395 billion go out the door in 2 weeks? And then everybody was panicked, like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my money because 800,000 loan applications were in the queue, right? Well, there's a lot of reasons beside what is obvious, but it was bad. So round 2, after Congress got through fighting over it, came out. And it was how much, Steve? 310, 18, something?
320 billion.
Oh, good. You see Steve's role. Keep this real. So anyway, so we're up to 700 billion, maybe something like that.
Right.
Okay. So I started hearing stuff like, oh, free money. There's free money. Well, I don't know what you guys think. This is not free, this is not free money. This is your money. If you look at the statistics, who pays most of the income tax in the United States? It's everybody on this call. Okay, it's your money that you're recirculating through the government, which takes a haircut and then loans it back to you. And what they're doing, Mnuchin talked about, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin talked about this, they're borrowing as much money as they can right now through government notes, because the interest rate is, guess what, for the government? 0%. That's the rate. So for 0%, they figure, let's throw money at the problem. So everybody on the call, including our businesses, are unwittingly being called into being accomplices in what they're doing. This is not cynical. I'm just telling you what's happening here. You're borrowing your own money. It's not free money. They're putting it on the credit card called government debt. Unless you pay the money back, which is not why we're doing it, because we want forgiveness, that doesn't make the loan go away, really. So either you're going to have to pay it, or your kids are going to have to pay it, or your grandkids are going to have to pay it, or their grandkids are going to have to pay it. And I don't know, maybe they can get 0 interest forever, but they've never seemed to be able to pay off the old debt. So don't be confused about what this is. It's a big old government socialist style bailout deal. Okay. So I don't think that's a reason not to take the money. We applied for the PPP loan for our businesses. It makes perfect sense to me to build up your capital and be prepared, because this could get bad for a long time, regardless of what they keep saying about it going back to normal. I don't think normal exists anymore. I think it's something completely different. I just don't completely know what that is. So it's a loan. We're assuming, because Steve, how many loans has your bank issued, community bank, in 3 states?
I believe it's right around 630.
630. So some of the humongous banks, right, issued how many, Steve, per bank?
The larger banks were probably more around, geez, I mean, I heard numbers like 400,000, 500,000, like some of the larger banks in the country. Sure. I mean, that's
And there's how many larger banks? 5, 4, 5, 6, something like that?
No, I don't know. There's probably 100.
Okay. So there's 100 what we call larger banks, and then there's regional banks or community banks like Steve's. How many are those?
Well, I mean here. Well, hold on, Glenn. So here locally, there's probably, within the Pittsburgh region, I'd say there's, I think, 7 to 8 large banks, and
Okay.
then those would be considered 50 billion and larger.
Yeah.
Between 10 and 50 billion, I'd say there's probably, more like probably 15, I'd say.
Right. So the community banks, which kind of tells you what they're about,
And
right?
10 billion and under are community banks,
Yeah.
and I'd say there's probably, 15 or 20 of those.
Okay. So there's more of those, and they're doing proportionately less loans. But I would suggest, from what I know and experience all over the country, is they've actually done a better job. That's not a criticism of large banks. It's just an observation, okay? Because they really know their customers, okay? So the community banks have done well, and they've struggled. I think that's fair to say, Steve. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
that's what, certainly a lot of the national press has been that community banks have executed this program a lot better. Absolutely.
Okay. So they're looking forward to forgiveness just like you guys are, and they're frightened just like you guys are and I am about it. I think it's going to be a lot harder than the getting of the loan. But we're assuming that for purposes of this forum, these series, that you have a loan, that you've been, announced that you're going to get a loan, or maybe you've already gotten the money and you've kind of started the clock on the 8-week period. If you haven't and you're struggling, some people still are. I talked to a man at 7 o'clock this morning who tried through his unnamed big bank in Georgia and waited for a month and still couldn't get any results. So he's trying other routes. And I said, please stop. I'll help you. Just don't do any more. Okay. It's still out there like that. So let's assume you've gotten the money, you're going to get your money. So here's what needs to happen next to get forgiveness. So the goal, right, what we're trying to do for everyone, everybody on the call, everybody who cares about this subject, is get you through the forgiveness, right, to forgiveness. That's the goal. Get my loan forgiven. So it's not a loan anymore. It's a grant, and hopefully secondly, you got it. You didn't struggle too hard. You didn't get distracted too badly, and you didn't get into trouble. And I say that kindly, but when the SBA keeps changing the rules and now the IRS is involved, it's gotten really concerning for a lot of us in the business. And that's where I worry about the most, that people are going to sleep and they're thinking, I got my money, thank goodness, I can just go back to work and do what I need to do and get my people back in place and just give them the money and we're done. No, that's not what's going to happen. Okay, it's difficult. So that's the reason for the tools. And like everybody else, the SBA is laying the track in front of the train. We're laying the track in front of the train. Okay, so we're doing the best we can to help you. So that's the first thing. What I would say to you is, just for a second, let's think about how you got the loan. You took your payroll probably for 2019, the whole year, right? And you divided it by 12 to get a monthly average payroll, and you multiplied that times 2.5. Does that sound familiar? That's probably what everybody did in one form or another, right? And there was confusion about that, but that's kind of the bottom line to what happened. If you think about this, and this is important, in terms of time, right? Because we talk about monthly average payroll and a multiplier for the loan, but as soon as we switch to forgiveness, we start talking about time, not money. right? So if you think about time on the loan part, you got 10 weeks worth of payroll money, not 8 weeks, right? So 4 weeks is an average month times 2.5, that's 10 weeks. So you have 10 weeks, not 8 weeks for the budget. So that's actually, interestingly, one of the things that's kind of throwing this off, because the intent, the thinking, according to Senator Rubio and people like that, was that we would give the businesses enough payroll for 2 months, 8 weeks, but because the business had to keep the doors open for the people to come back to, we just throw in something else, which is the 0.5 part, the 2 weeks, and you could use it for rent, utilities, etc., some interest, right? This is where it gets problematic. What define all of that for me? What is 8 weeks? When does the 8 weeks start exactly? How do I define payroll? Who's in the payroll, right? What the heck is an FTE, full-time equivalent employee? I mean, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it. I don't necessarily want to get into all of that today, but I'm just telling you that's where the issues are, that's where the questions are, that's where the concerns are. Do you think that's true, Steve?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We're seeing as business owners start to dive into this program, as they start to get their money, and a lot of you have, and start to disperse your funds. There are a lot of business owners are asking very good questions, and the truth of the matter is, we just don't have the answers yet, and it is concerning, because there are certainly some borrowers that we have at the bank that they're 4 weeks in. They're halfway through the 8 weeks, and they're asking us questions, and we just don't have the answers yet. That was one of the, just on as far as, and as Glenn had alluded to earlier, this program changes and evolves weekly, and this week alone, I could probably talk about 5 or 6 different things that changed from last Friday to this Friday. But there are probably 3 big things, and one of them is that the safe harbor guidance that the Treasury Department and the SBA had given businesses to basically return the money, which was originally supposed to be May 7th, was extended to May 14th, or I'm sorry, it was originally May 7th, extended to May 15th, and now was pushed back to May 18th. So why should that matter to you as a business owner? Well, one, if you're a company that took over $2 million, you have until Monday to return the money. Should you determine that maybe you don't really need it. But really, for most of you on this call, why that deadline is important is because that is the deadline that the SBA is basically using for themselves to put out the forgiveness guidance. So at this point, where we were originally supposed to get guidance for forgiveness on May 7th, it now looks like May 18th, Monday, we'll finally start to see the guidance that the SBA is going to provide us bankers in regards to the forgiveness. So
That's great. So one of the things Steve's talking about that I would offer to you as a first suggestion is print off a calendar, the one you got from your friends at the insurance agency, or if you've got one of those calendars in your computer, you can print off and mark the important dates on this. You don't want to miss your dates. Okay. So the first date is the date you got the loan, the date it was funded. As soon as you hit that date, or that you hit that date, put a big old box around that. if you have a way to project it, model it, think about it before it happens, it's called scenario planning. That would make it a little easier for you. So you kind of have a sense for it. Because if you can tell at the front end that you're not going to be able to spend the money correctly or all of it within the guidelines, you're going to owe money at the end. That doesn't mean you did something wrong. Don't spend it for me. Don't spend it to pay off a line of credit. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you can't fit within the guidelines, you're going to owe money back, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but you should know that before you get to the end. Having spent the money's now gone. How are you going to pay the loan back? Does that make sense? So that's that thought process. Okay. To Steve's point, the government realizes that a lot of people jumped in there and borrowed the money that didn't, quote unquote, need the money. That is not the language in the 880-page act. There's nothing that talks about need. Rubio specifically said we didn't put in a needs-based requirement. I won't go into the lingo, but some really big companies like Harvard and LA Lakers jumped in and grabbed the money with the assistance of some of these aforementioned large banks that they use. And that clearly wasn't right. So they gave them an out. But you have the same out. So if somehow you're convinced, I'm not convinced anybody on the call would fall within this, but if you're really worried about this and somehow you're going to get into trouble because there are penalties for doing this wrong in the act, there's teeth in it. If you're really worried about that, then you're allowed to give the money back, and they keep changing the date and extending it. So what are they signaling to us? They're signaling something, correct? They gave people an out though, and this is what's really, really important. It's not the date change. Everybody was waiting on this for in pain for the last 2 weeks. The rule now says, if you have a loan of 2 million or less, and there may be people, we have clients with loans of over 2 million, right? If it's 2 million or less, you don't have to worry that you needed it or don't need it. You're not going to go to jail. You're not going to pay a fine. It's assumed that you need it. That's really critical, really critical. If you're over 2 million, you will be audited, period. They've announced that already. So if you're over 2 million, I would say just be really prepared with everything that we're recommending, right? Under 2 million, that's the good news takeaway for the day. If nothing else from today, you don't have to worry about that, okay? So let's get back to the traps for just a minute. On this worksheet, which, Brian and Kelly and I talked about it again yesterday, I have struggled with distributing stuff because I don't want it to go out there everywhere without some understanding of what the limitations are. Plus, we don't know what some of the rules are. So here's my offer. If you'll email us at our company, it's info@themainpoint.com, like it sounds, THEMAINPOINT.com, info@themainpoint.com. We're not going to use your email. No, I don't want to capture it for business. I can't do it all anyway right now. So all I'm asking is that we control, quote unquote, where this is going to, because my concern is not you on the call, because we're going to go through it next week and I want you to have a heads up. But my concern is that it goes out there to somebody who doesn't know what we're talking about and doesn't understand the limitations. The other concern is by next week, it may be different looking because it's been different looking for a month. So I want to keep an updated copy in front of you. Does that make sense to you, Steve, to do it this way?
Yeah, I think that's a good exercise to go through. And just on one quick note, so the reason that the Treasury Department and the SBA came out with a additional guidance for companies that borrowed under $2 million is because they really got a sense that there were many, many small businesses who were going to give the money back.
Yep.
For SBA and the Treasury to address that specifically in one of their FAQs, they were nervous. They were nervous that these small business owners were just going to throw up their hands and say, hey, I don't want to go to jail, and I don't want to be held liable, and I'm going to give it back. So that's why they really clarified that issue with the borrower certification, basically saying, hey, look, if you got under $2 million, we're going to assume that you needed it. And so that's some of the thinking behind why they rolled out some clarification on that issue earlier this week.
Been welcome, actually.
Right.
So I think we've sort of said enough about all of that. So let's do the Q&A. Document this. You can manage through it. We'll give you the tools. We'll help you think about it. Don't wait. If you're really worried, ask a Steve, ask a Glenn, ask a somebody who's working in this area. A lot of the bankers and CPAs, no, they're my buddies, right? A lot of them are not really, they haven't dived into this, and they're offering their best assumptions. That's dangerous, right? You need to really know. You need to be able to point to what it is that you're saying if it's, a critical question. So why don't we do some
Okay.
questions?
Great. Unfortunately, Brian has been kicked off the call.
Well, that's normal. That's good.
So
Yeah.
now you have to deal with me.
No, I like that.
So we do have a couple questions in the chat, and I'm just going to go down through them. Please rest assured, everyone, if we don't get to your question, we did have Glenn answer them last week, and then we distributed the answers. So we will make sure that we get to all of your questions in some way, shape, or form. And this is being recorded. The first week is on our website under webinars, so you can click on that if you'd like to watch last week's presentation as well. But, okay, Glenn, for you.
Okay.
If my PPP loan wraps up in mid-June, but
Yes.
we are still not allowed to open, must I maintain my payroll levels through June 30th in order to avoid forgiveness reduction?
Okay. So hopefully, first of all, phenomenal question. Any of the questions I know the answers to, I'll just answer. If I don't know, I'll have Steve answer it. How about that? So the dates that you're working with, unless they change them, as scary as that sounds, for now, we know what we know. The dates are the date you got the money and 8 weeks from that date. So if you were funded this Monday and you count out 8 weeks, that's it. There's no wiggle room. There's no before, after. There's no Hail Mary pass, because I've heard that a lot. I've heard it from business owners. I've heard it from CFOs. I've heard it from bankers. I've heard it from CPAs. That is not what it says. It's very tight. It's 8 weeks, right? So the first, if I heard it right, can I go until the end of June? No, it's 8 weeks. Well, wait a minute, my dog died. Sorry, 8 weeks. Well, wait a minute, I can't hire my employees back because Governor Wolf, Governor Wolf said, and I know Ellen's listening in from Baltimore. Governor Hogan said, you can't even hire anybody back. You're not allowed to have anybody on the premises. 8 weeks. So the question to me is, you need to know the rule, but then what's the workaround? Do you know what I'm saying? That's what businesses do. That's what business people do. Well, okay, I understand the rule. I'm not going to violate the rule, but how do I work around that rule? So what they're trying to do, the goal of the program, is to get the money to you so that you can stand in for the unemployment office in your state and pay the money to the employees. There is no requirement that they work. There is no requirement they come to your office that's closed. There is no requirement that you rehire them, quote unquote, to get the money. And how much of a headache does that give you? Like, that's the antithesis of being in business. Wait. I'm going to pay somebody who doesn't work. Yes, if you want forgiveness. That's really what they're telling you. Steve, is that right?
Yes, that is correct. I know that in a lot of the preliminary information, the June 30th day was kind of bantered about, and it's in writing. But based on how loans are being distributed, I've got to think that deadline will at some point be null and void, and that it'll really be more, 8 weeks, at least from when you receive the money. I'm hoping they give people a little more flexibility with when that 8 weeks occurs, but yeah, it's definitely 8 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Steve raises a good point, and there's so much speculation out there. I'm concerned that if you're hoping that you get an extension, if you're hoping that Congress somehow thinks about this instead of just reacts, you can hope. It would be lovely for me to say, oh, no problem. I'm concerned that this person's 4 weeks in, right? Isn't that what you said?
Well, their PPP wraps up mid-June.
Okay.
So they were asking if they had to maintain the payroll levels through June 30th.
I'm sorry. So Steve said somebody's 4 weeks in.
Right.
If you're 4 weeks in and you're hoping they extend it, I think you're going to have a really hard time spending the money properly.
I'm sorry, Glenn. Along those same lines, that I have another question that came in that says, after the 8 weeks post-funding, if we're still unable to reopen, can we lay our employees back off and still be eligible for forgiveness? In other words, is it strictly what happens within the 8 weeks that matters?
Right. So put a bright yellow box around the day you got the money. Put a bright yellow box around the day that's 8 weeks. Erase your memory from before you got the money. Erase your memory from after you got the money, after the 8 weeks. Irrelevant to this.
Okay.
What people are doing, here's what people are doing. I hear this all the time. Well, when this thing hit the fan, I laid everybody off. In fact, we have one business owner, Steve asked, could you help this lady? She has 17 employees. They can't come to the office. She can't go to the office because Governor Wolf said no, can't. So they're not. So she fired herself. She laid herself off. And they all went to the unemployment office. They're now getting more money. The employees are making more money from the unemployment office than they are in their jobs.
Yeah.
So she's going, wait a minute, I'm going to get this loan and I'm not going to be able to get anybody to take the money because then they're going to get more money staying on unemployment. That's a problem, but there's nothing in the rules that solve that problem for us. So the other thing that's going to happen, I predict, is we're going to have a surge in unemployment claims 8 weeks after the $700 billion was spent on your credit card. And if you think the unemployment depression style numbers look bad today, we're going to see a huge surge because everybody's going to lay everybody back off. What are you supposed to do? My office is closed. I can't go in there. My employees can't come to work. Their husband says, are you kidding me? I'm not letting you go back. It's a big problem. So
we have a lot of questions here, Glenn. So I'm gonna move you along.
Yep.
that I want to try to get to as many. But again, rest assured, we will answer your questions in some way, shape, or form. Are salary increases eligible for forgiveness?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, that was an easy one.
Yes.
Another one, if our pay date is after the end of the 8-week period, but covering the work dates in the 8-week period, is that amount included in reporting for forgiveness?
Okay.
So a lot of these questions are running around the 8 weeks. So if I'm circling back, I want to make sure I get questions, but we may be answering the same question.
No.
But this sounds a little differently.
Yeah, it's a different question. You want me to take it, Steve? I know the answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a very difficult question. The SBA and Congress has invented a new method of accounting. Literally. Here's the rule. This is worth writing down. It's a trap. The new basis of accounting is this one. Okay? Sorry guys. Oh my gosh. I don't know how to get rid of this ball. There we go. Everybody knows what cash accounting is, right? Everybody knows what that means. If you pay a bill, it doesn't matter if the bill happened before, because that's usually what happens, right? When you get your water bill, your rent bill, it isn't for that period that you pay it for, the day you pay it. It's for the next month of the past month, okay? Cash accounting says the day I pay the bill, I take the expense. I recognize the expense. Classic cash accounting. The other method of accounting is called accrual accounting, ACCRUAL. Most business owners don't use accrual accounting because it's confusing. But accrual accounting is actually accurate. It says, I recognize an expense when I incurred it, right? I recognize income when I earned it. Cash accounting says, I recognize income when I received the money. I recognize expense when I paid the money. This is really important to understand what's happening here. It's going to throw so much confusion into these calculations. It's a very difficult problem. What the new method of accounting says for purposes of this exercise in this 8 weeks from hell is you get to take the sum of the following costs, payroll, rent, etc., incurred and payments made. It's a mishmash of accrual and cash. It's weird. It's totally weird. So what all these nerdy guru guys that I talk to every day, which is why the Valium cocktail tastes really good about 4:30. They are confident right now that if your circled date on the calendar was this Monday, but the payroll period started the Monday before and ends next Monday, you have to take that into account. You only count half. You understand what I'm saying? You have to adjust every expense for incurred and paid. You have to adjust. That's going to be an accounting nightmare. But right now, that's the rule. So hopefully, this is not going to happen next week, but hopefully what we're going to talk about next week is the planner part, hoping that we have enough time to help people, Kelly. Mm-hmm. By the next week, I hope to have something that you can use that will help you not go out of your mind in terms of the accounting for this.
All right, next question. I was shut out of PNC where my business account had been and where my automatic payroll through Paychecks is set up. I opened up a new business account at Community Bank where my PP loan came into.
Okay.
Can I write a check from my Community Bank PP loan fund to my PNC payroll account to fund the paychecks?
Do you want a job? That's a great workaround. Steve, can you handle that? Because we had that exact same situation happen for a number of clients, correct?
Yeah, we certainly did. I, I think some of that answer to that question will revolve around, you know, what documentation exactly that the government is going to want to see. You know, if you have a way to connect the dots from Community Bank to PNC to your payroll, it's probably going to be okay. Ideally, though, if there's a way to change your payroll from PNC to Community Bank for a 2-month period, it would probably make it easier on you. I don't know, Glenn. I know we went back and forth on this. What's your take?
I think you're right at the moment. I think that everybody's saying lots of different things. I believe it's really critical to have separate accounts. Some accountants are saying, no. The government's not going to make you do that. I don't think it's an issue of what they make you do. I think it's an issue of what is easier for you as a business owner. And when you get to the end, how you make it easier for yourself. That's what I think. So what we're trying to do is create helpful tools, one page, so that you can document this as you go, so that you get to the end and you're not having a nightmare scenario. So my plan at the moment is to know the dates, make the expenditures correctly, document them as we go, and have my operating account, to your point, reimburse the special PPP account, not necessarily every single check, every single time, right? Maybe twice a month, maybe once a month kind of thing. The documentation is the key. So if you have a $10,000 a month loan, I can see keeping track of the expenses and writing an expense check, a disbursement check from the PPP account over to your regular account to reimburse it for all those expenses as you go. I think that would be a clean method. Does that help?
I think so. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a couple more questions in here about the 8 weeks again, but I have some from a different topic. If I hire additional employees over and above my current employees, are they included in the forgiveness?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this question I think we answered before, but can I increase my employee pay and call it COVID-19 hazard pay for the 8 weeks to assure that I meet the 75%? We did say that we could increase salaries, right?
Yep. I mean, I think you have to use your brain. Don't triple somebody's pay and try. I mean, that could be problematic, but use your brain.
Glenn, you're going to love this one. Because this person is Tammy is doing exactly what I think you would have told her to do. Because of the criteria for forgiveness seems to be a moving target, we are keeping our loan funds in a separate untouched account so we can repay them if needed. We are making payroll payments from other accounts. Is this okay?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. I think we have time for one more. Is there any more clarity around allowance for sole proprietor single member LLCs?
Kind of. One of our businesses, we report for tax purposes in that way. And I think we talked about this last time. A sub-S corporation, a partnership, a sole proprietorship are treated differently under these rules, and unfortunately negatively differently. So if you're a single member LLC, if you're a partnership, most people on the call, Kelly, raise your hand. It's different. So if you're not that, I'll give you a headache. So just email me or something. It's complicated. So it's manageable. It's just complicated. Is that fair?
Perfect. Well, I am going to go ahead and I think we're going to wrap it up for this morning. Again, all the questions that were not answered, we will make sure that we get answers to from Glenn or Steve. I want to take this time to thank Glenn and Steve for being a wealth of information. And the question still remains, will my PP loan be forgiven? So every week we generate more questions. So we are going to continue this. As Glenn said, next Friday at 10 o'clock, May 22nd, we are going to talk a little bit more about the guidance and the worksheet and stepping us through some of the process, the planning process for that. But again, if you have any questions, please contact your CPA, contact Glenn, contact Steve, contact your financial advisor. Reach out and ask for assistance in this very confusing time. The small business development centers are available. You can always contact us and we can put you in here at the chamber, Brian, and I can put you in touch with someone as well to make sure that you have the right resource. So please reach out in this very confusing time. Again, we're going to meet next Friday, May 22nd at 10 o'clock again for part 3. So please join us and think about your questions. If you have other questions, you can always feel free to email us here at the chamber as well. We are open, not physically, but we are working remotely and here to just help our members and all the small businesses in our community so that we can stay united as a community. Check out our Facebook page, check out our website. There are always a lot of resources. If you are not a member, thank you for joining us today. And if you'd like to learn more about the chamber and the things that we do, again, feel free to reach out. And this will be recorded and be on our website probably by the weekend. So thank you, Steve and Glenn.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good.
Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.